It's just you and me today. No children. I kind of anticipated that, but I was prepared in case they came. But good morning to everyone. It's springtime. The rain is falling. I have had a whirlwind week. I have traveled, about 1,500 miles myself, and then Walter and I had made a commitment about a year ago to be with one of my former students at a church down in Carbondale to facilitate a marriage seminar. So we left Friday afternoon and came back yesterday, and that was a good time. But Walter did the driving, and the miles were on his car this time, so that was a good thing. So we had a nice long ride down together and hung out and spent some time with some married couples at the Hopewell Baptist Church in Carbondale, Illinois, where it seems that everyone has some kind of connection to Southern Illinois University. So small college town. So we had a good time. Today's sermon I've entitled, The Bottom Line, I Can See. And thanks so much to Karen for reading that story so beautifully. Usually Joy, I think, gets the long text, so I was actually asking. I said, is Joy the cup elder, or is she going to have to read this? She always does such a nice job. This story, I think, is one of the most interesting and actually funny stories of healing in the Bible. One of the first things I want you to do is to, in your mind, go back and every time you hear the word the Jews, substitute the religious leaders. Historically, we know that in the Gospel of John, John used the word the Jews not to refer to all the Jews, but really to refer to those who were religious leaders. And this is one of the biggest critiques of the Gospel of John, is that it has this anti-Semitic tone, that every time you hear that phrase, the Jews, it's blaming a whole group of people for what happened to Jesus. So it's really more appropriate to say the religious leaders. And if we think about the Jews in this text as the religious leaders, or maybe even the Christians, we might come to some different interpretation. Let's start at the beginning of the story. A man who was born blind. A man who many people had seen sitting by the side of the road, perhaps sitting near the gates of the temple where many people would sit and beg for their livelihood. Because this man was blind, he could not earn his own living. He probably was shunned because, as you hear them say, who sinned? Who sinned that this man was born blind? This was a common understanding of any kind of physical or mental ailment in the ancient world. If you had physical ailments, if you were mentally ill, you were possessed by demons. But if you had a physical ailment, you had done something wrong. You'll remember the story of Job, who, very wealthy man, beautiful family, loses everything, and his friends come to him and say, look, you need to confess. What did you do wrong? These kinds of things only happen when people are in sin. So the first challenge that Jesus has to face in healing this man, or the first challenge that the young man has to face, is that everyone assumes that something has been done wrong. That the reason he's in this state is because of something he or something his parents have done. Well, Jesus is pretty straightforward. What he says is, no one sinned, but God is going to use this situation to teach us something, to give us a greater insight into who God is and what he can do. So Jesus very quickly, when I was a little kid, I used to think this was really a yucky story. He spits on the ground and makes a little mud and puts it on his eyes. Even now, that just seems like, ugh. It's maybe even worse than being told to go dip in the Jordan 7 times, as he told another man. But the young man is able to see. He is excited about being able to see. Can you imagine being blind, being born blind, and never ever knowing? In one of the other Gospels, there's a story about Jesus doing a very similar healing. And initially, Jesus says to him, tell me what you see. And he says, I see men walking as trees. So we know that the sight was not instantaneous. Just like when we wake up in the morning or somebody suddenly shines a bright light in your eyes, it takes you a while to sort of orient your senses about what you're really seeing. And I imagine that even the John version of this story does not tell us that initially this man probably struggled with sensory overload, that he probably had nothing to compare this experience to. He could see. He goes on his way and the people are like, hey, wait a minute. Isn't that the guy that used to sit by the gates and beg? They're not really sure because he probably has a whole new demeanor, right? He probably is carrying himself in a very different way than he had before. So we have a miracle that Jesus has performed. The only testimony I would argue that really matters is the testimony of the man who was born blind. He says, I do not know who he is. I do not know whether he's a sinner or not. All I know, I was blind, and now I see. Period. End of sentence. Today, if someone were born blind and all of a sudden they could see, if we were told that some person had come along and put some sort of salve on their eyes, we might ask the same kinds of questions. Not because we didn't trust the miracle, but because we would have a very different understanding as Christians in the 21st century of how God can work. Maybe you know of friends or people who have had CAT scans or CT scans, and cancer is there the first time. They go back and there's no trace of the cancer. Doctors are sometimes completely overwhelmed by the notion that we thought the diagnosis was cancer. We can't explain this healing that we've just seen take place. Most of us would not be questioning the doctors in that case. Most of us would simply accept the fact that, wow, God has just done something amazing. But because the religious leaders do not like Jesus because they see him as someone who's disruptive to their understanding of how the religion of Judaism is to be lived, and it's to be lived by doing certain things and not doing other things, the fact that Jesus has done this on the Sabbath really just throws them all off their square. Who is this man? What did he do to you? What did he say? Is he a sinner? What do you know about this man? Twice they interrogate the man who was born blind. And the second time he gets a little funny with them. Like, I've already told you. You didn't listen to me the first time, so why are you asking me again? I don't know anything about this man. All I know is that he healed me and I now see. He believes in the result so much that when Jesus asked him, do you believe in the Son of Man? He simply says, well, tell me who he is. He recognizes Jesus. And he says, if you are telling me, you who have healed me, are telling me that there's something I'm supposed to believe in, let me know who it is because I want to align with the truth of my healing. The Pharisees have investigated. Jesus and this man have a conversation. Jesus understood that the man has actually been thrown out of the synagogue because he refuses to deny the truth of his own healing. The text also tells us that the people were divided. Sounds like anything you have heard of recently. We live in a divided world. We even live in a divided church, my friends. There are people who believe differently about how God moves in the world. There are Christians who believe that unless one does X, Y, and Z and believe in A, B, C, that you're not really following the true Christ. This man in the first century was told that as a Jew, he could not trust anyone who would be healing or doing anything on the Sabbath. And yet the others are saying, but wait a minute. Unless this man obeys God, he couldn't even do the miracle. So how can this person not be of God when he has done a major miracle? We are so divided. Newsweek magazine just recently did a cover story about the Bible. Very interesting article. If you subscribe to Newsweek or if you can look at it online, I'd encourage you to do so. It quotes one of our favorite New Testament scholars, Bart Ehrman, who teaches us a lot about the New Testament. And we all have studied a lot about the coming together of these texts and where they come from, and the fact that there are lots of disagreements, even within the Gospels. Some Gospels contain some stories, some Gospels don't contain other stories. The point of this Newsweek article is that the people who are saying, "Thou shalt not," don't even know what the Bible actually says about anything. They are focusing more on what we would call the letter of the law. As these Pharisees say, "We are disciples of Moses. We do not recognize this Jesus." They are insisting that what happens has to accord with the letter of the law. With the eyes of Christians who believe in what Jesus said, that if you are my disciples, you will have love for one another. If you are my disciples, you will feed the hungry. You will take care of the sick. You will visit those in prison. You will turn the other cheek. You will give your cloak to someone who doesn't have a cloak. Jesus never asked what day it was. He didn't ask whether or not the healing should happen on the Sabbath. Jesus didn't ask the man, "Are you tithing to your church?" Jesus didn't even ask the man until later whether he believed in him. Jesus saw a need. He had the power to meet the need, and he met the need. Whenever we're divided about whether or not to meet the need, there's a real problem. Because nowhere in Scripture does it tell us to ignore the need. Nowhere in Scripture does it say, well, we shouldn't have a food pantry today because it's Sunday. Or we need to be sure that people belong to a church in our denomination before they can come to our back to school. It doesn't say, and we have, as a denomination, made particular statements about the fact that everyone is welcome to our communion table. We don't say that we're disciples of Moses or disciples of Terry or disciples of Sharon Watkins. We say we're disciples of Jesus Christ. We are guided by the Holy Spirit. We seek to be His presence in the community. We are called to love and welcome all because God has loved us all and welcomed us all. When we are divided, when we are concerned about an interpretation here or an interpretation there, I invite us and I call us to listen to the testimonies of people whose lives have been changed because of the truth of God's love through Jesus Christ. We really don't have to have a deep theology. Theology can really be pretty simple. Theology says, God has made a difference in my life. Theology can be as simple as, I was blind, but now I see. I believe in that God. I follow that Jesus. Theology can be as simple as, I want to help my church serve others. So I'm donating to Belarus to help the children in Belarus. I'm coming to the women's tea because I want that money to go to the back to school fair to provide for children whose families can't meet the need of having school supplies. I want to work at PADS because I believe seriously when Jesus said to feed the hungry, that that's what He intended for us to do. The bottom line is God said love. Jesus said love. He said feed. He said care. He said welcome. We can quibble about the letter of the law all day long. But as we serve and follow this God who sent us his Son, we have to align with that love, with that reality, that what people will know, they won't know initially who this Jesus is that we love so much that we want to give them money in Belarus. They will say, whether these people are sinners or not, the bottom line is, I got to go to camp for 10 days. The bottom line is, we have new playground equipment. The bottom line is, we have a clean and warm place to stay. Kids at the back to school fair won't ask, well, are they this denomination or that denomination? Do these people believe in tongues? Do they believe that the Old Testament is relevant? Do they believe in this doctrine? If we were to ask them that question, they would say, I don't know. I don't care. All I know is I had a good time today. And I got back to school supplies. Did you see my backpack? That's all they care about. And then later, if they come to church, we can tell them the reason we did all that is because we love Jesus. And Jesus has told us to help you and love you in that way. There is a bottom line. And the bottom line is not holding people to jot and tittle of the law. The bottom line is meeting the need. Do they see? Can they eat? Are they healthy? Do they have a place to stay? Do they know that we love them because God loves them? That's the litmus test. That's all that really matters. That's the bottom line. Do they feel the love of God because of what we have done? It's that simple. A great story. I love the guy's final thing. Look, I've already told you. It's just that simple. I was blind, and now I see. I don't know who that guy is. I don't really care. He made a difference in my life. And I promise you, as we continue to reach out to our community, that is the bottom line. It's the bottom line for me, and it should be the bottom line for you. Amen.